I really hope my story gets chosen. I know no one will believe me, but I need to tell you what happened that night at the drive-thru. Since then, my life has never been the same. I work the early morning shift at a famous fast food chain. Money is tight, the hours drag on, and the nights are predictable. Or at least they were. Normally, the early morning silence is broken only by the sound of engines or distant laughter. But that night, there was something different. I felt the moment I walked in, it was as if the air was heavier, charged with something I couldn't identify. It was a cold, human night, the kind that sticks to your skin and makes the air seem thicker. The fog gradually swallowed the parking lot, making the sign lights a flickering blur in the void. The road was deserted, and the only sound was the constant hum of neon, interspersed with the distant screeching of tires on the highway. The cold cut like a blade, but there was something more, something that wasn't just the weather. It felt like the very air around me was thick with tension, as if waiting for something. At around 2 a.m., while I was organizing the stock of sauces, I heard a dry, muffled sound. Something had hit the trash can outside. At first, I ignored it, thinking it could be an animal or the wind. But the noise came again, this time louder, as if something had been thrown. With my heart racing, I approached the window and looked out. I only saw the pitch black, the silhouette of the dumpster, and the white smoke that came out of my mouth with each nervous breath. It must just be my imagination, I thought, trying to shake off the discomfort. Minutes later, as I tried to concentrate, something even stranger happened. The lights inside flickered for a brief second, and the feeling that I wasn't alone intensified. I began to notice details that had previously seemed insignificant. The subtle creaking of shelves, a low, repetitive noise, as if coming from somewhere deep in the store. It was barely noticeable, but constant enough to make me frown and wonder if I was actually hearing it or if it was my mind playing tricks. I tried to distract myself by checking the orders in the system, but it didn't help. Tension seemed to gather around me like an invisible weight. And then it happened. A quick sound, like hurried footsteps on wet asphalt, echoed outside. I stopped what I was doing, my heart racing. I walked to the window, hesitating, and looked again. The parking lot was empty, but something seemed different. It was as if the shadows were darker, denser. I blinked several times, trying to adjust my vision, but the discomfort wouldn't go away. After a few minutes of silence, I began to relax, convinced I was overreacting. That's when I heard the dry noise in the trash again. This time, it was accompanied by a subtle, almost imperceptible noise like dragging, coming from somewhere beyond my vision. My chest tightened, and a chill ran down my spine. I tried to convince myself that it was nothing, but the truth was that I knew something was wrong. Something was watching me, and I had no idea what it could be. That's when she appeared. The intercom suddenly rang, the metallic sound echoing in the silence, and it made me jump. "A sandwich, please," said a female voice low, almost a whisper. It was difficult to explain, but there was something about the intonation that made me uneasy. I ordered automatically, trying to ignore the feeling of discomfort. I went to the window, packing the order, but there was no one there. Nothing. No headlights, no engine sound. Just the empty road and the freezing wind. I looked around, expecting to see a car arriving late, but everything was still. Confused, I went back to the counter, trying to justify what had happened. Maybe it was a problem in the system, an order registered wrong. But before I could convince myself of that, the familiar sound returned. The dumpster being knocked over outside, only louder, more violent. I went to the service door and peered in, my eyes adjusting to the darkness. Nothing, but this time, the feeling was different. I wasn't just hearing things. I felt a weight, a presence, something invisible and oppressive that seemed to watch me from somewhere nearby. With my heart racing, I went back inside, closing the door tightly. My reflection in the glass showed my pale, frightened face, and the sound broke the silence again. It was no longer the sound of the trash can, but something subtler and even more unsettling. Footsteps, slow, rhythmic, echoing around the building. I knew I was alone, or should be. Each step felt closer, like it was surrounding me. The lights above flickered, and the sound of footsteps became clearer. I tried to take a deep breath, but the air felt heavier, like it was being sucked out of the room. There was no one in sight, but the footsteps persisted, getting closer and closer, slower and slower. I felt my palms sweating as I asked myself, who or what is out there? I can't explain what happened after that, but it was like the entire place was alive, breathing around me. As I tried to understand the footsteps outside, the intercom rang again. My heart almost stopped. I hesitated before answering, but curiosity overcame fear. When I put the phone to my ear, the same female voice, now even quieter, said just one word, my name. The coldness of that word ran down my spine like a shock. "Who's there?" I asked, my voice cracking, but there was no response. Just the sound of slow, deep breathing on the other side. I froze, unable to move a muscle, as the lights around me began to flicker, casting long, distorted shadows on the walls. The sound of footsteps, which had previously been distant, now seemed inside the building, circling around me. I picked up my cell phone, trying to call anyone, but the screen didn't light up. Instead, I saw my reflection pale and eyes wide, locked in a terror I couldn't hide. It was as if something was draining the energy from everything there, including me. With my heart beating so hard that it seemed to echo in the silence, I decided I couldn't just stand there. I walked to the back door, each step feeling heavier than the last. My hands shook as I gripped the cold handle. But before I could turn it, I heard the sound of an engine revving. I ran to the drive-thru window, hoping to see a car, a person, anything that would bring a semblance of normalcy. But, of course, there was nothing, just the thick fog covering the road and the echo of silence, spreading like a wave. The engine, I swore, I heard disappeared as quickly as it had appeared, leaving behind only the sensation that something or someone was watching me closely. To this day, I don't know what happened that night. I can't decide if it was a cruel prank, a product of my exhausted mind, or something much darker that I simply can't explain. I have since left the night shift. I couldn't step foot in that place again after what I experienced. But even at home, the silence of the early morning haunts me. When I hear footsteps echoing down the hallway or a distant sound that shouldn't be there, I feel the same cold I felt that night. The worst part is the voice. She still echoes in my mind, as if she were alive, whispering my name with the same haunting calm as before. Go back to the window. I try not to think about it too much, but I confess that the questions never leave my head. Was it real? Was someone out there watching me? Or was it just my imagination betraying me? Every time I recall the details, something new seems to emerge, but never a concrete answer. That's why I'm here, telling you this story. I need advice because doubt is consuming me. Do you think this was real? Or was it just my mind playing games with me? If you were in my place, what would you do? Honestly, I'm trying to move on, but this feeling of something watching me still hasn't gone away. And this was one of our followers' stories. If you want your story to be told by us as well, leave it in the comments below this video. And if you enjoyed this video and want to see more content like this, we prepared the next video especially for you. Click here to watch it,